First of all, it's an exciting day for the Cowboy football program. We added 5 players today, so the total number of student athletes that we've signed this year are 24. During the course of developing our recruiting matrix, we wanted to have the lion's share of our class signed on the early signing date, and then have a certain number of scholarships left. And I think our staff did an excellent job as far as going out and identifying guys of positional need that were going to be important for us to fill. And then the second signing date was really super. Sometimes you have surprises, and today there were no surprises. A lot of these guys that we signed today were heavily recruited. They had a lot of options, and they held to their commitments. So we're really pleased. I'm going to just go ahead and talk about a couple guys alphabetically. Alfonso Andrews, a running back out of St. Louis, really an explosive player. An excellent high school football program. They were very successful and a heavily recruited player. Now that doesn't necessarily mean they're all going to be great, but he did have a lot of options. The type of back that we think is really going to be complementary to our offense, which is going to be important. Alonzo Hall, a big, tall defensive tackle prospect, 6'5", 230 pounds. He does play defensive end. He runs extremely well. We're really excited. We call him Philly, and we're certainly excited about him. He initially resided in Philly, so everybody calls him Philly. So it'll surprise some people every once in a while when I refer to him as Alonzo. But we're really excited about Alonzo and what he's going to bring to our defense. He's certainly got a lot of room to grow, and we plan on adding some lean muscle mass onto him in the weight room. DeWine McNeely is a guy that we had recruited for a long time, a running back from Modesto, and really an outstanding program. A big, strong guy. We feel like it's important to have a complement of running backs that have different attributes, one of them being a big, strong guy that can move the pile, but he does have explosive movements. He did have an 8.4 yard per carry, something that we always look at, and he comes from an excellent program, so we're excited about DeWine. He visited during the early part of the year and went through the whole recruiting process, and we appreciated his commitment and holding to that. Shayne Wilson, I think I've done pretty well on that one. Athlete out of Houston, Texas. What's interesting about Shay was many years ago when I was a young coach at Rice in the Southwest Conference, Shay's defensive coordinator was a player who I actually had coached at one time, and so that kind of helped with the conduit. But as you can see, we've made some great inroads in the Houston area. Shay was a quarterback that had a lot of different options, and then as the recruiting process went along, we really felt like it was important to be honest with him, let him know we had interest in his skill set, but would not be a quarterback. And so during the course of the recruiting process, I think a lot of schools were somewhat, I don't want to say dishonest, but probably not as forthright as what they should have been. And so during this process, we really built up a great relationship of trust. He stands about 6'2", and he's 210 pounds now. And those guys we have felt they have transitioned to the linebacker role extremely well. If you look at Logan Wilson, Logan played corner up in Natrona County and put on some lean muscle mass. So we're looking for athleticism, and I really want to. We also think Shay will be an excellent special team players. Titus Swain is a running back out of Dallas, and a guy that is, he's explosive, but he's a strong, powerful back, plays in a very competitive league. Once again, you look at his numbers, they're very impressive. So we felt like it was going to be important for us to sign, some running backs. So we got thin last year. We lost a really talented player with Nico. And so for us to sign 3 players at that spot is really going to be helpful. You can never have too many running backs in that system. And then along with that, I know much has been reported already on Levi Williams, but he's already in school. And so that was another component to our recruiting class that was really going to be important. So we're pleased about that. We're also pleased to announce that we have 8 commitments of guys who are coming here as non-scholarship players. They're from the region of, most of them are from Colorado or Wyoming. I believe we do have one young man who's from California. But if you go outside, you'll see that we have awarded 27 scholarships to guys who initially have come here without a scholarship. And so, there's a lot to be said for that. We have been really, really pleased with our walk-on program, giving guys opportunities and then, rewarding those guys. So that's kind of where we're at with this class. At this time, I'll open it up to any questions anybody may have. Yes, Robert.
Craig, you mentioned, it's a well-rounded class that addresses needs, and, every class every year is different, but does this class compare favorably to previous classes, good, bad, or different, or does this one stand out, maybe? How would you think?
It does stand out. The reason why I say that is I think we had, our recruiting office, Mesa had done a great job directing all our coaches. There was a lot of effort that was put in on the front end. And what you're always looking for is just coming down that home stretch where you're at on those scholarship numbers, and then as you develop that matrix, what needs are being met. And what you do not want to do is compromise the quality of player just because you have a need in a certain position. And as a result of that, I think we hit on almost all of them. I would think we're still a little bit light at the offensive tackle position, but a lot of the other places we're really pleased with. Identifying defensive linemen is always important, defensive ends, safeties, corners, running backs, quarterback is always a critical area, wide receivers. So personally, I'm really pleased. And it was a great deal of effort by the men that are in the back of the room, and a lot of miles logged. And so I think backing another positive recruiting class is really going to help. One of our long-term goals is have long-term sustainability to we're not having the ebbs and flows. We're going to be a consistent program in the Mountain West. Other questions? Yes.
You mentioned the 3 running backs you signed and the different skill sets they have. Was that on purpose, where you went out and recruited different guys that you can use in different ways, different roles?
Some of it came into the guys that were available that we felt like had shown a competitive nature on their competitive high school teams. But then also what we felt like was important to have, some diversity in that group. Yeah. If you look at DeWine, you have a guy that walks in, and it's always dangerous to compare size and high school tape, but very much a liking to Brian Hill. I know you weren't here when we had Brian, but Brian was a big, strong guy that got faster when he was here. We also feel like it's important to have some explosive guys, and not just little guys that are scat back guys, but while they may not be really imposing with their size right now, they possess great power and strength. And so we think we're really happy with the 3 different type of backs that we have. Yes.
You mentioned, a lot of these guys were heavily recruited is it a big deal to get these guys in that had some Power 5 offers and things like that? A big deal to you
No.
to do that? No.
No, it's really not. I mean, for us, I think anytime you start looking for recruiting trophies, that's not our model. I know some schools, that's their model. I'm not going to fault that. We go by what we like and what we see. I think we're pounding our chest. We're probably as thorough as far as evaluating what guys fit into our system. And then, once we see those guys, we're aggressive on recruiting. We do a lot of in-person evaluation, which we feel like is kind of lost in the art of multimedia and huddle and all the social media and things like that. So I think we're really pleased with our evaluation. And I also do think this, though. Our program is in a different place than what it was 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, there's a couple things that lend itself. One, a great consistency. We've got a lot of stability. You have 3 years of good records, not great records, but good records. While we were disappointed we didn't go to a bowl game this last year, we were bowl eligible. And certainly the high altitude training facility it speaks well. When a young man walks into this facility, there's a message that's sent to them that they're coming into a big-time football program and a big-time athletic program. And so when you package all those elements together, I think that gives you an indication of maybe some of the guys that we've recruited against.
I know.
In the back.
Coach, can you talk about the kind of a pipeline you've created in California and now Texas added to it? I know you spoke to it a little bit in December, but has that just kind of maybe shown how the brand has grown with some of these young men?
Well, one of the things about California that we have found, some of the guys that have recruited out there have been in the same area for several years. The Mountain West moniker plays well out there. We're on TV a lot. If you look at the number of schools that are out there that play high school football, and it's good high school football, and then along with that, you combine that with the number of colleges that play football in the state of California, that ratio is, pretty favorable for a school like us. But what we have found is going to be really important for us. We went out with the message of, the Wyoming profile, and we've been very intentional with our intentions, what kind of guy we're looking for. And I think as each year has gone along, the coaches that have recruited California know which kind of guy is going to have an appeal for Wyoming and which kind of guy doesn't. And so we've been much more strategic with our plan. The state of Texas, quite frankly, has exceeded my expectation. I had recruited Texas for about 15 years personally, and I know the previous staff here before we got here recruited Texas heavily and had tons of attrition. And I think in the combination of, once again, how young men view the Mountain West Conference, there's something about the state of Texas. I know I kind of joked with Mike Grant, who recruits Houston. I saw more pickups down in Houston that were four-wheel drive dualies with cattle guards, and they're downtown on I-10. It makes no sense, but they like trucks. And so I think that there's some feeling of liking the Cowboys. And so that, with the combination of a lot of connections that we've had, and we rekindled those, that area turned out to be very profitable, I would say. Yes.
When you look at the whole class, whether it be based on skill or maybe positions of need, which guys can realistically, or do you expect to come in and maybe push for playing time?
Well, there will be a couple that push for playing time, but I do think that the depth and breadth of the class indicates that there's going to be, each one of those guys is going to get a hard look, and that's not rhetoric. There's a lot of them that bring a lot to the table. Our decision to play a freshman comes down to three-pronged things. First of all, we need to have a positional need. And the NCAA, when they modified the redshirt rule, being able to have 4 games, that lent itself right away to some guys who may be more special team players. Then the next component that you look at, do they have athleticism? Are they athletic enough to be able to go out and compete and win at the Mountain West Conference level? The third component is a component that many times gets lost in all this, is their emotional maturity. We may have a positional need. There may be a skill set that we could use, but freshmen a lot of times just are not ready for the rigors of college football. I know when I played, freshmen were ineligible, and I think that there's still merit for that. And so we'll make a measured decision which guys we play. That's sidestepping your question. I think your question is very valid, but I do want you to know we like the breadth and the athleticism throughout this class. Yes, Robert.
Still have one scholarship left?
Yeah, we have, the NCAA allows you to have 85 guys on scholarship, and you can at the most sign 25 initials. And so we still have a 25th player. We will either look to sign that within our current squad, or a lot of times there's something that does become available, i.e. a late qualifier, or sometimes a transfer. Into today's world with grad transfers, those are also out there, but that is not something that we have targeted right now. Yes.
Levi, getting in on him with Houston making the coaching change, how did that happen? And
right.
I do end up signing him.
Here's a case in point. We were just completing our national coaches convention. There was a period where coaches could not go out, and during that time, I was in meetings and things of that nature, and as opposed to returning back to Laramie and then flying to Dallas, I chose just to stay in San Antonio and drive up. And Brent Vick had gotten in touch with me and said that he had been informed that his high school coach had said that there had been a coaching change at the University of Houston. The match wasn't quite right. And would we be open at least to considering Levi? And so before we did anything, it was going to be imperative for us to get released and Levi to be in the portal. What really was helpful also was, as a young assistant coach, I think I was 29 years old. I was at the University of Wisconsin, and we recruited a option quarterback out of Texas City, Chris Ballard, who now is the general manager of the Indianapolis Colts. Well, his high school quarterback coach was Levi's high school quarterback coach. And so I had mentioned to Coach Vick, I said, you know, my connections with a lot of the high school coaches are gone past. Most of the guys I know have now either retired or they're athletic directors, and lo and behold, Coach Hill was a guy that there was a great connection. And matter of fact, I was on the phone with Chris Ballard today from the Colts, and so that really helped with the conduit. And then we got to find out, then we got the release, and as opposed to driving up to Dallas on Friday morning, I swung into San Antonio there and started the recruiting process. The stars aligned right. We're really excited about Levi. Levi's excited about being here. So sometimes it's better to be lucky than good.
How much in-person evaluation did you do with him, if any?
None. And so we did a lot of film evaluation, but I can tell you that was one of the things that helped when you know a coach inside out. You know, I trusted a lot of the things that he said as far as his leadership, his competitive nature, and things of that. They've had a lot of good players in the past, and so it wasn't a whim, but make no mistake, that recruiting process was not near as lengthy as thorough. But because of Coach Hill and the evaluation we did, we're confident that we hit a big-time player. Okay, some questions maybe online.
I think mine were already answered.
Okay, great job, Tracy. Yeah, good answer.
Hi, Coach.
Yes.
This is Miles One from CBS News Channel 5. I know Parker Christensen signed last signing day. How do you plan to use him? How is he fitting in the offense since he was a running back in high school and making the transition to tight end?
Right. You know, when you think of a traditional tight end, that's not really Parker's skill set. If you harken back to a couple years ago, we had Jacob Hollister. You saw a guy that would line up in the tight end position occasionally. A lot of times we would move him in the backfield, release him downfield. Certainly he did some blocking, but he was a guy that could stretch the field and had great athleticism. And so that's kind of our role for him. So we're excited about Parker fitting into that role.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Other questions that are here today? Okay, yes.
I know you've had Marcus and some other guys come start as walk-ons, be walk-ons to your program. How important is that to your program?
I think it's a critical part of our program, and you know, walk-ons are guys that really add great value to our program. I personally was a walk-on at the University of Nebraska while I didn't play much. You know, it was a great experience for me, and I felt like there was value that I had. And so what we have done is we have cast a pretty wide net, but we've been really honest with the guys that we have actively seek to come to the University of Wyoming without a scholarship. And then what it does do, we found some great leadership. We've also found some really excellent players like Marcus and Garrett. You can go down the line. And then along with that, the depth that it brings to college football, you know, guys get injured. And as opposed to having to jerry-rig some things, you know, you have another player that can come in. And then the other thing that you'll find is time and time again, the guy who's heavily recruited, you think they're going to be a great player, and you know what, for some reason they don't pan out. And then the guy that maybe be the overachiever in high school comes in and really continues to work hard. He has great work habits in the weight room. He goes out and practices hard. He continues to get better. And one of the two things happen. Either the guy that's heavily recruited starts upping his game because somebody's pushing him, or they get beat out. And, you know, the thing that we have told all our guys is if you're good enough, you're going to play. We're going to evaluate every one of you. I think we watch more tape in practice and scrimmages than most anybody else in college football. And so as a result, the cream rises to the top. And so what also is important, though, is if one of those guys reach that level that they deserve a scholarship, that's the very first place that we look to award a scholarship. And so we back up what we say, and that word spreads around. The one thing that we have found about the University of Wyoming, people in this area appreciate being plain spoken. They don't need bells and whistles and, you know, a quick sales guy. They just want somebody they can trust. And so, you know, our body of work as far as utilizing those non-scholarship players and them getting on the field and then being rewarded scholarships has had a big impact, and that's one of the reasons why I think you're seeing those records begin to get moderated to where we're not having the big ebbs and flows. Any other questions? Okay, thanks a lot. Great to see everybody again.